I'm going on now. So vamos a tratar de conectar con Nixon otra vez. Si no, vamos a hablar con el hermano Trevor sobre una conversación que vamos a tener el miércoles.
I'm gonna have to set up real quick, bro.
Okay. Alright, but I'm already on.
Yeah, because I wasn't ready.
Alright, so I'm already on. I mean, you get on when you're ready. Yeah, Nixon, I'm trying to add you.
Yes.
There we go. Finally, we on. With Nixon.
Oh
Nixon,
man,
you got to talk to your network provider, your internet provider, man.
mama nani internet lehi.
Bani internet, man. Luti badume aho mutu ya. Who you got? Like Spectrum or I don't know. We gotta have this conversation, Nixon.
Ajá.
Porque como tú sabes, I admire what you have done. Gayati wadume ha lida Garifuna, yati wadume lida Chumbago, lida Musi uge Megan. But
Trilingüe.
yeah, hopefully the
Le
market is something lida Megan.
Leo bitasalia yagi.
Okay. So as you know, I've been going to Honduras since '85. We go from New York, from Bronx, New York to Santa Rosa de Aguan. We make a stop at the airport in San Pedro. So that's my experience, right? Your experience is kind of different. You stayed in Aguan for a little bit, right? Until like, I don't know, sixth grade, fifth grade.
From the time I was born to the time I moved to New York City. So I lived in Aguan for 12 years. I was almost 13 when I moved to New York.
So you experienced Mitch then?
I was there 100%.
You was in Mitch?
I was in Aguan during Mitch. I was 9 years old.
So, okay, Mitch happened in '98. Nosotros votamos luto de mi abuelita who died in '97. Like one day before Mitch happened, that's when we flew.
Oh.
At that time, I was still working on getting my bachelor's from Buffalo, and my friends was telling me, "Yo, you see what's going on in Honduras?" I'm like, everything's fine in Honduras. I just left, and that's when this hurricane, this like major catastrophe hit our community, and I came down that weekend when it happened.
Oh wow.
Down to New York City, and make sure that mom was good, and and then I went to this person's house over here on Prospect, and I saw images of it, and I'm like, damn, that's Aguan.
Yep.
So how was that experience? Like, how did it shape your psyche?
So every time we see a major hurricane hit the Pacific, even to this day, I still experience PTSD from that experience in Aguan when I was 9 years old. I am glued to the TV every time I see something like that, and I see. I relive that experience, and all I can think of is the concern that I have for the individuals in the path of that hurricane. So I know 20 years have passed, and the people that were lost, there's we still mourn them, and I still remember their faces, like, the majority of the people that we lost during that catastrophic event. So yeah, it was pretty sad, but yeah.
Yeah, I heard the horror stories, man. My grandmother, la hermana de mi abuelito Sambo, they took her to like the field where there was
Uh-huh.
La Loma to leave her there because the water was rising. I heard about Chavelita who came here to New York and she was telling us that she floated all the way out to the Bahamas on top of a
Right.
house. And then she was looking at, dead people floating by. She was saying, I hope I don't see my children or my husband. I mean, it was an experience for us.
Right. It was traumatic.
So you was 9 years old and then you
Yeah.
came to America at 9 years old.
No, I came to the U.S. Approximately 3 years after Hurricane Mitch. So I lived
Okay.
in Honduras 3 years post hurricane. So I was there during the reconstruction of the new communities, which further fragmented the whole community, which distanced people from, like, the center the of what Aguan is, la cabecera municipal, which is el
Right.
lado grande. Um, that further fragmented the whole community, which, you know, that whole statement, uh, when a community is divided, then, easily people can come and change things around.
Yeah, I mean, our community is like so vulnerable to a lot of things,
It is.
especially Aguan. A
It
lot of
is.
things happen in Aguan, and people just don't talk about it because they don't want to get involved or it has something to do with their livelihood.
Right.
They just don't want to get involved. They just want to continue with their everyday life. But I'm just curious, when you got to this country, what was your mindset like? Because I know you went to Hunter School of Science and Math. Like, what was your mental state and in staying focused and being in this new country? Like, how was that like?
So when I first moved to the U.S., I did not know how to speak English at all. Um, Spanish here and there, like, I grew up in a household where the predominant language was Garifuna. So that was, like, the everyday thing for us. We spoke Garifuna every day.
Right.
Yeah, we used to speak Spanish in school and all that, pero así lo hablábamos pateado, el español. And then fast forward, moving to Manhattan at first, went to a middle school there that provided me an ESL education that allowed
Okay.
me to both learn the material in both Spanish and English. And then from that, I graduated from middle school, top of my class, valedictorian for middle school. Went on to Manhattan Hunter Science High School, um, and there again, like, I really like science, um, and then wanted to continue that trajectory where school was hard given that I was still learning the language, but that didn't deter me. Um, and I give a lot of credit to my parents, my older brothers, my sister, who had lived here for like uh, 10 years prior to our arrival, my brothers and
Okay.
I. And then my grandfather, he was also instrumental. He was
Hector.
still he was still
No,
with
Hector.
us. Don Hector
Right.
Melendez, he was still with us, and he was very instrumental in those first few years. He inculcated education, he pushed it, and from those conversations that we used to have with him in the house, to the house, like, the small debates we used to have between my siblings and I in our home, about the importance of education and the importance of being able to compete in a global economy. You have to be able to get an education that can get you through the door. An education is the first step, but your interpersonal skills and your interpersonal, the way you interact with people, is what gets you further along in that journey. So I began to understand that. I learned. I became a very good listener, and as well as asked a lot of questions. So that was my trajectory.
I mean, and then you graduate from Hunter, math and science. How was the process for picking schools like for you? Like what was important to you in selecting a school?
So one of the important things for me in that process was I always use a motto that in Spanish, no solo de una avenida se llega a Roma. So our high school prepared us, gave us the opportunity to take college credits early on when we were in high school. So I graduated in Hunter Science with about 20 college credits. So granted, I moved to the U.S. English is my third language. When it was time to take the SAT exam, I did extremely poorly in that exam. But I decided to go to City College for 1 year and then was able to utilize the A's that I received during my first year there to transfer my efforts into Cornell.
Okay. See, I
So
didn't
that
know
was
that.
my
I didn't know that
that
you attended City College.
that was my
Okay.
trajectory. Given that I couldn't get in through providing that important exam, but I could get the same opportunity with the opportunities that I was already given with the college credits that I had received. So the whole thing was to excel during my freshman year in college,
Right.
and then utilize the strength that I developed during that first year
Right.
to send me over to the school of my dreams. So during that process, I applied to several colleges and universities, and I did pretty well during that process. I ended up choosing Cornell because it was within reach, because I was already I was already living in New York State.
Right.
So for us that live in New York State, we stayed in-state tuition.
Right.
So that allowed me that opportunity. So I was extremely grateful for that opportunity to have that to be able to go there.
What was your major in Cornell?
So during my time at Cornell, I studied biology and society, which is a which
Biology and
is
society.
so
That's
yes.
it.
So that major prepares you to either go into any field in the science, if you wanted to do basic science, or if you wanted to go into medicine, or if you wanted to go into public health, or if you wanted to go into law that is related to health, then you can do that. So I used that trajectory to prepare me in the areas of both global health and go into the areas of public health, which is the field that I'm in right now.
I have to ask you this question. Did the experience in Aguan and the hurricane play a role in you selecting that particular major?
It did, because going to college for me became a humanitarian act. It became a huge responsibility.
Right.
It's an effort for me to be able to give back to my community. and as well be able to mentor the next generation of those individuals who want to pursue an education within the United States. So that experience during Hurricane Mitch created a huge level of health disparities in our reality in Honduras, in Aguan, that the reason why I chose the major that I did was to eventually understand the processes by which we receive health or we don't in a country that neglects our communities from sending the necessary resources either related to health or education for the empowerment of our people. So we don't have those basic access that will allow us to compete
Right.
when we try to pursue higher education.
Yeah, I mean, Aguan is like what, maybe 1,000 people, and they only
Yeah,
have
maybe.
like one clinic. When I was
Yeah.
in Honduras in 2015, last time I went with mom, we were staying between Trujillo and Aguan. We were leaving Aguan, I think it was August. Well, beforehand, we had seen a medical brigade. It was like a Navy ship. It was the hospitals that they send out to Haiti where there's a disaster. They
Mm-hmm.
sent this particular ship to Trujillo. And I can remember, this is like so vivid to me. I can remember seeing the lines of people and the busloads of people receiving medical care at this brigade. And it was between Castilla and Trujillo. And I
Right.
was like, wow, that's a problem. That's a problem. Like us, I don't remember ever. I have horror stories of medical or health issues of like people in my family. My grandfather Sambo, he had to be driven from Trujillo, from Cristales to Ceiba to get some type of treatment, and he died in the process.
Right.
And I know there's a hospital in Trujillo, but they are
Right.
very limited in what they can do. So for
Right.
us as a community in Honduras, we're suffering when it goes to health and the disparity. I mean, I see it here in the Bronx as well.
Right.
Like there's a huge health disparity here in the Bronx. Again, another vulnerable community, but it's like we all have the same themes. I mean, the government doesn't necessarily provide for us. I mean, Honduras is not a human right to have health care.
Right.
I know that in order to get to Dantoni, you gotta pay like 1,000 lempiras just to get into the emergency room.
Right.
Like, what if you don't have that? A lot of people die. I mean, it's a sad state for us in Honduras.
It is very sad and unfortunate that that's the current state, and by which my understanding is that healthcare infrastructure in Honduras is moving more towards the privatization in a country that is ravaged with poverty.
Right.
And it's so like Honduras, it's poor because of its the external debt of the country is ever growing, but the citizens are not seeing um, where is that money that they're borrowing, like going to improve the life conditions of people.
Right.
So that is further digging holes for to make the situation worse.
I mean that's a long conversation because I believe Honduras like they have it in for Garifuna people, but it's not
Right.
just for us though. It's for other indigenous communities like the Lenca, the Tolupan, the Mosquito. These communities suffer from the same things that we suffer. I mean,
Right.
look at your grandfather. I remember my mother telling me stories about your grandfather going to Tegucigalpa, shining shoes. just to get into school.
Right.
Like he did whatever, and then he ended up becoming a professor, I think.
Right.
And then he brought that knowledge and he brought it back to Aguan and helped out. I mean, look at my grandfather. My grandfather became a merchant marine here because he
Right.
dominated English in Honduras. I believe he worked for a Standard Fruit Company, and they ended up bringing him over here
Mm-hmm.
to New Orleans, and then he came to New York. I mean, I don't know what to say about Honduras. I mean, I go to Aguan and that's it. I mean, my relationship to it is just mixed.
Right.
I can't really say I'm a catracho. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you do that, but you're evicting a whole bunch of entire communities of Garifuna people from their land?
Right. And
And I don't know if you got a chance to look at the court cases of Ofraner versus the state of Honduras and the
mm-hmm.
way that the legal team of Honduras has the way they frame their questions towards our people is not necessarily friendly. I mean, they make us seem like we're foreigners to Honduras. Well,
Right.
we've been there since 1797. I mean, so
Right.
that, like I said, that's a long conversation for us.
Yeah. We were in Honduras before Honduras became Honduras.
Right.
So our ancestors fought for independence as well. Our forefathers fought for independence as well, and that's something we should never forget. We are as Honduran as any Honduran in Honduras, and that's why we shouldn't. We should still be able to say that we're Hondurans because our ancestors fought for that right.
Right.
And our goal as collective Hondurans, um, those of us living in outside of Honduras, we should build bridges to to inspire the next generation that's coming.
Right.
It's a process, and I think that little by little, by mentoring and providing the type of uh, resources available on how to access, how to write an essay to get
Right.
into a college here in the U.S., how to mentor the younger generation on what can they possibly face when they go into an institution of higher learning in the United States, what to expect, um, how to prepare themselves to be able to be competitive in an economy that it's moving towards a lot of the the technological boom, and stuff like that. So those are the questions that I'm asking myself on how I can be of service to the next generation. But as far as the court cases in Honduras, with our ancestors, I think we need to continue to support those individuals who are in the forefront out there. And we should also invoke to our ancestors so they can continue to protect them in that process, because it is our responsibility. I know I saw the last part of what it meant to be a Garifuna in Aguan, growing up, how people protected Aguan, people
Right.
protected our community, and I think we should go back to that way of life. We should go back to being jealous of what's ours. Take ownership of what's ours, because we are stewards of that land, of that territory. It is our responsibility.
See, you said something very interesting, Nixon. You said we should be jealous of our land. I mean, that goes back into our cultural philosophy, Aura Buni Amuru Nuni. And that's, as a community, that's our cultural philosophy. Like, we look out after each other. And that was the only place, when I was spend time in Aguan from 85 to 98, like, that's the only place where I felt like real communal love. Like, everybody knows Tisani, Delmi, Tibadi Flora, Tibadi Sambu. You know, they knew my family because everybody, you know, my parents were from there. So it's like the whole community is related to me. And that's where I felt, you know, communal love. You know, like, I remember persons being happy to see me and still have a conversation in Garifuna.
So Buzi Gwati Wawongo.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I love that.
Right.
In our community, you know, I felt the love. I definitely felt the love. So I'm like, you know, when it comes to other people from the community and trying to do well, like, I see my mother and my grandmother, they did as much as they could to help out in the community.
Right. No, I do.
Doing barbecues,
I do
send money
remember
to the church over there.
I do remember.
I mean, they did what they could, and I see that rubbed off on me because I try to do as much as I can to help out in the community, whether it's just giving information about it or just donating money to different causes. I mean, we have a lot of issues in Lawan right now.
And for those individuals that live here in the U.S. From various communities of like Garifuna, there's a lot of opportunities in this country. We just have to be we just have to be smart about how to seek out those opportunities within here, because again, if you look at like if we have a well-informed community here in the United States, our dual citizenship status carries a lot of weight in our countries of origin, in our country of origin. Like, you know, that thing carries a lot of weight. And I think that's one of the things we haven't used to our advantage. And as well as being able to share information with one another. I know we're dispersed throughout different states, but this is the age of technology, Facebook, Google Live. Ani soon Louis, siya lengo mutubong, siya go nate nungo nate, hell, abidya gwat ni ebete nungo, bidya no haliega belanda tat na gumesera, alag da haba. Adunde haboy kate haliega bala bagumese. Kaya alam ko basubo diago bungwa madaga bamuga. Keo be bohenge wani gu yete ge onduge da lebo nyigi. Mudi bamu daga video niga aw.
I remember my mother drilling that into me, and for too. They were sticklers in producing.
Right.
There's a word for that in Garifuna. I forgot the name of it.
And I'm not saying ningún trabajo deshonra, pero todos somos beneficiarios de una vida y algún día esa vida se va a terminar, y lo que tenemos que hacer es que no solo ser un nombre en una tumba. Hay que escribir nuestra historia, hay que escribir nuestras experiencias para que cuando los nietos de Pablo, los nietos de Nixon, los bisnietos de Julián, los bisnietos de Elsa puedan decir, wow, estos sí fueron visionarios en sus tiempos, porque our people were visionaries during their time because we heard their stories.
Nixon, did you know that we had gentlemen from Aguan back in the 60s that had Swiss accounts?
I did not know that information.
The Gomez, all these merchant marines, they had Swiss accounts, man. The
Wow.
Gomez brothers, my grandfather, I don't know if he had a Swiss account. From non-knowledge, he didn't. But there were other persons, that were actually visionaries. Like they, the money that they made here in the States, they used it to build up Aguan, buy land. I know the Gomez brothers, they bought a lot of land in Aguan and in
Mm-hmm.
Ceiba and other parts of Honduras. So we have those
Right.
people, back in the 60s and, in the 70s.
Right.
I mean, the question is like, how do you prepare your children for this global economy and humanitarian causes that they should be looking forward to? I mean, in the future, like my son, I know that I'm trying to give him all the tools necessary in order to participate and to be competitive. But how
Mm-hmm.
can we make or create or manufacture another Nixon not ours? As a
It's
parent,
just
what would you say to parents?
the way I saw my parents did it. They were a great partnership. They were like, as soon as we got to the U.S., they were like, nosotros vamos a trabajar y ustedes tienen que ponerse las pilas de estudiar.
Hmm.
Háganlo por ustedes. So that's what they did. My dad, my mom, they worked very hard. Um, even though um, they were limited in their ability to communicate with teachers and but you know it was my responsibility to do well in school, and also like my brothers as well, like they work extremely hard themselves, so I was able to see their efforts. So when there's a village around you that it's hungry for wanting to do well,
Right.
then and you don't want to be the outcast in that group. So it was a family project. Um, we saw how my grandmother, my mom's mom, she used to talk about her experiences when how limited their beginnings were and how coming to the United States allowed them for another opportunity to rebuild and like get another shot at life. So I will say that this is the land of opportunities, and to be able to provide the tools for the next generation, just have your kids be inquisitive, ask questions. If you don't know something, ask them. Do your research. So that's how it happened for us, um, and never losing sight of like also where we come from as well, because I think that's pivotal and important. Because when I was in the halls of Cornell, Columbia, I always told my story where I come from. I come from a small village, a small town in the northern coast of Honduras, and I take a lot of pride in that. I'm never ashamed of that. My roots. I used to walk to school to Planada. I remember
Wow.
those days.
I never had that experience.
I used to walk to school. So
That's a long walk.
when I as a young kid walking to school, that's that was a hike every day. So that also was a huge motivator. It's not all of that happened. It wasn't not to become different from people, but
Mm.
was a pathway for success, a pathway to show other individuals that it's possible.
Right.
So it is possible. And you don't have to go to Cornell to be competitive, but it's great. So hay que desempeñarse, hay que trabajar duro, um, y hay que tener la pasión. You have to be hungry for that change.
Right.
And those experiences allowed me to see other parts of, like, you know, what other parts of the world is possible. Like, you know, a lot of ancestors, a lot of the people that came before us, my uncles were able to see different parts of the world through their work as merchant marines. But I was able to see other parts of the world through school. So that in itself was eye-opening, and it allowed me to dwell in those environments in a different capacity. So for that, like, you know, I'm so grateful that I chose, and I took the trajectory that I did. And for those individuals who have questions for me, like, you know, I'm very happy to answer them. Very happy to share my experience.
I think it's very important to highlight how it became a family project for you, because I know that you have other siblings, and they too. I mean, I know that Ronnie, I'm gonna have Ronnie on next week. I know
Mm-hmm.
he just obtained his PhD, and I want to know
Right.
how that experience was for him. Like, what propelled him to get there. I know that your grandfather played a role in that as well.
Yeah, he was a
Like,
huge. He was a huge influence in all of that experience. And I wish he was alive so he can be able to see what we've done. And
right,
and I have a cool story about that. Um, when I enrolled in school, I only enrolled with my first last name, Nixon, my first name, middle name, and my first last name. But I saw that my grandfather was extremely influential in that process, that I went ahead and went to my school's um, bursar office to add Melendez into that
okay.
process. So in all of my diplomas, you will find that last name there, because that's a way for me to show my appreciation to him for the hard work that he did um, on our behalf and showing us the
So
way.
so you were at Cornell for 4 years. What happened after that? What made you decide that Columbia was the next move for you? Like, how was that process like for you?
So my interest in higher education, like, you know, that level of competitiveness that I saw at Cornell, I didn't want it to go away. I wanted it to continue. So I did another effort to work extremely hard to be able to obtain my master's at Columbia. So that process was challenging in itself. Like, you know, as part of the first generation, like, you know, never saw myself in a million years that I said that I will either graduate from a college or from a graduate program. But it happened, and I did it at both Cornell and Columbia. So that in itself is a huge honor, um, and is a humbling experience, and it also puts a lot of responsibility on me to be able to show the way.
Now, that experience led to your current job, in which if you could tell us about what you do now at your current job, and how your education has shaped that.
So presently, I am a junior health scientist / fellow at the Centers for Disease Control. So everything that I say here it's my personal experience and my personal journey. It does not represent anything in the beliefs of my organization. So I must put that disclaimer out there.
Okay.
So none of it represented, but I'm just here to share my experience with the rest of my community. So right now, my my current work focuses on understanding and addressing the social determinants of health to reduce health disparities of sexually transmitted diseases nationally. I particularly focus on understanding the the epidemiology, or the way sexually transmitted diseases manifest among Hispanic Latinos in the United States. So that's where a lot of my work lies, and in understanding that work in that particular population. But I also look at STIs among African Americans, and as well as the general population as a whole, and as well as other projects that comes within my current role. So
Nixon, I know you have to go, but I have to ask you this question. So if I wanted to find out the data on Garifuna people in relation to STD, would the CDC have that information?
no, because the Garifuna population is a very small population. So in the United States,
Right.
but there are certain scientists within different universities that have looked at particularly HIV among Garifuna people in Central America. I've identified a few papers in that area
Okay.
that I've read. I can share those with you. But and again, it will be great to also look at the science that went behind those papers as well, and so we can also be able to provide our insight and our perspective, because we live being Garifunas every day.
Right. And I understand scientific racism does exist.
I can't confirm that, um, but my whole work is to be able to understand science and do it in a highly professional and respectful manner that is respectful of everyone, um, and protect the health care of our current nation, and in protecting our nation um, from diseases. And so yeah, I can't.
All right. So Nixon, it was a pleasure having you on. I mean, I started this weekly conversation just for, introduce different persons from the community to the wider community, because I want to showcase people that are actually doing something in the community. We're not just limited to dancing punta and all the popular things that Garifuna people do. I mean, we do have scientists in the community, we do have professional people, and I want to showcase them. In addition to talking about issues that affect our community, that's the whole point of this show, Mabruiga Garinagu. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
taking a different angle in talking about the community. We dive into the history, the social, political realm of things and how it affects us, and trying to find solutions to our experience in Honduras and here in New York and in
Mm-hmm.
America. But thank you for your time. And do you have any closing words?
It's just you got to be hungry and thirsty to be able to attain the path that we've taken, and
Right.
and never give up. Always ask questions, and as well be humble, and as well take pride in who you are as a Garifuna, as an individual, and your place um, within whatever field you go in, because you should leave your mark. You shouldn't be just a number. Those are my last words.
All right. Sereme nibu namule. Buiti
Well,
guyong. Buti lutu ludi la budi na degme hoga so. Sereme.
Same nigga von Mabruiga hon so what doing you? I long behave nile. Think niya hon former gwa kate no halig dini na halig daman. Na daga ba le nu buff. Kaya alam ko ne was so le kaya no be lengo ni. Think niya hon. Wait
Sereme.
ko yo.
Buiti guyong. Namule.
Wait ko
Okay.
yo ati.
Bye.
Bye.